To order. Sam, roll call, please.
Martin,
Here.
Burkhart,
Here.
Cope,
Here.
Reddy,
Here.
Evans.
Here.
First item on the agenda is to discuss the stormwater utility CIP update.
Good evening. Annually, we need to, as required by the stormwater utility, do an update of the financial health of the utility. And we typically do that at this time of year as we're finishing up our CIP as well. So I'm going to quickly try to cover both tonight. This was reviewed by the Quality of Life Committee back at their October meeting. So for a couple of you, this isn't new information. The memo I put together starts with just kind of a summary of where the status of where our current projects are at. So I'm just going to briefly go through those. There are maps of each of those attached to the end of the memo. Terrace Drive was a storm sewer project that was needed to address some localized flooding. That's nearing completion, actually at current. Green Meadows West Huntingwood Channel has been designed and bid, and we're expecting construction to get started sometime yet this fall or into next spring. The contractor RW Excavating actually was the low bidder on 3 projects, and so we're working with them on timing of how they're going to prioritize and stagger those 3 projects. The second of those 3 is the Forest, which is just off of Forest Drive. That one only actually impacts 1 property, but we're having to do a drop-down structure there. The third project that's also been bid and awarded to RW Contracting is the Beaver Creek Bank Stabilization, which is adjacent to the Ignite and Lithia properties. That is a joint project with a trail component where we're reconstructing and realigning the trail through there where it's currently gravel because of previous washouts. So it'll be a busy winter, spring, summer construction on those 3 projects. A couple other projects that are active. Royal Park Estates, that project is just in the early stages of design. There was actually just a neighborhood meeting last week. That's correcting some damage that's a result of the original middle school building or high school building being dumped into a ravine and covered up. We've been dealing with that over a number of years. We have money budgeted for River Bend Drive outlet repair, which is the Schroers and Larsons. We have an agreement with them. They have not followed through with their requirements at this point yet, but we do have money budgeted to accommodate that. The other sort of active project nearing completion, our citywide soil quality restoration project wrapped up this last week. In total, we did 32.8 acres of soil quality restoration. That's just under 1.5 million square feet. That was a total investment of just under $230,000. We do have a little bit of grant funding left that did not get spent through that process. And then if you recall, we did do an agreement with Polk County as we were getting that project started where they would commit $20,000 additional if we would commit $20,000. And so if you combine all that, we would have the capacity to do about another 250,000 square feet. So the contractor is willing to carry over the price into next spring. And so what we're tentatively planning on, if there's concurrence, is that we would do a change order with the contractor to open up basically a spring window, and then we'd solicit over the winter additional properties to expend those remaining funds. So been incredibly successful. I have to give a lot of kudos to Clayton. He has spent hours upon hours upon hours talking with property owners and working with the contractor and getting that project to be as successful as it has been. But it's been a very cool project.
I'll just comment, we had ours done and it already looks better.
Wait till spring.
Yeah. And I did notice when I was out door to dooring, I was really pleased when I would see, I saw a lot of yards that had been treated, so.
He didn't, when he put his summary together, he didn't do the total number of properties, but we were well over I think our target was 150 and we were right at that. So individual property owners, it really touched all facets of the community. So it was really good to see.
Hey, David. I know, I think when we talked about the quality of life meeting,
is it the Beaver Creek bank stabilization, or is it a different project where you're using a little bit different technology or an approach, so it doesn't require as much riprap? Am I remembering that right?
Correct. Yeah, we're doing, it's what we've done similar to other projects along Beaver Creek. Let's see if I can find this. I don't have a good breakdown of it, but it's what's called longitudinal peak stone toe protection. So basically that's a row of riprap kind of right at the normal level of water. And then there's tiebacks that tie back into the bank. And so where there's a steep bank, when we're done, there'll still be a steep bank. But what happens over time is as the water goes up, it goes over the top of that, silt deposits on the back, and we slowly build the bank back up over time. And so it doesn't require, we don't work on the bank. We don't have to remove trees to do this. We're basically working in the stream channel and limiting our impact, limiting our amount of riprap versus, where we'd go in and slope a bank, do a bunch of tree removal or whatever, and do a bunch of riprap. So it is a less invasive type of practice. It's been very successful where we've used it other places on Beaver Creek as well. That's what's proposed there on that project.
I think it might be nice to maybe find a way to communicate that that's an approach we're using. Because I think there's, a lot of folks don't like necessarily all the riprap. I think a lot of people would really be happy with the benefits as you've outlined, the fewer tree removals, fewer use of riprap. And so I don't know if it's through a communications effort or something. I think it might be cool to draw attention to that technique, because I think that's something that people would find.
We can certainly do that as that project gets underway and we've got active construction pictures. And
cool, great. And have we done that in a couple other places as well?
We've done it adjacent to Augustine, another one on adjacent to Green Meadows West.
On the Beaver Creek?
On Beaver Creek.
Okay.
A couple of them adjacent to the where the bridge crossing is that goes into the 156-acre natural area. So we've done it in a number of locations, and it's been very successful.
Okay, cool.
In fact, the Green Meadows West area, if you went out in the creek, aside from when the water is really, really low, you can't even tell that we've done work there most of the time. It's just kind of the natural, it's stabilized, but it's the riprap isn't really visible anymore.
Cool, thanks.
Last sort of update I have on active projects, our next project that's in queue in the CIP for design now this budget year and then construction next is up in Country Ridge, which is up off of Beaver Drive. We've got a series of drainage ways that all kind of come together and kind of a similar project that we've seen up along Beaver Drive where we have outlets that are too high and we're needing to do some drop structures and some stabilization. And so that one will, we have not started that engineering process yet, but we'd like to get an engineer under contract here over the winter, and then we'll start design and queue that project up for bidding probably about this time next year would be our target. And that project would be funded by an SRF loan. So in the interest of time, I just went through those all really quickly. Any other questions I can answer before I? Otherwise, I'll move on. As far as CIP changes, we did sort of as we do when we PFM does the analysis, we adjust the timing of projects to make sure we're spacing them out appropriately and can fund them all. So there are a number of just adjustments that way in the CIP. We did not have any new projects added this year. The one sort of change that I want to highlight, last year we had added a watershed assessment and stormwater management plan update into the CIP planning. That plan was last done in 2009. It's served us well. The reason we haven't updated it was because we've continued to implement the things that were recommended in that plan. But we've reached the point where we really need a reprioritization of our projects and really would like to advance that sooner rather than later, just so we can do a better job of making sure our limited resources are getting spent in the right locations. And so we are suggesting to move that up into the next budget year and funded through a GO bond issuance. that would obviously be paid for with the stormwater utility revenue. I also am hopeful, and we put some feelers out, that we'd be able to find some grant funding to offset that cost as well. So that's kind of one of the more significant changes currently proposed in the CIP. And when I get to the full PFM analysis, I'll pull that CIP sheet up and we can look at all those projects as they lay out. So the way the stormwater utility is billed, it's through the equivalent residential unit method. So we map every property in the community, how much impervious surface they have. And our average in Johnston has historically been 4,000 square feet. So for every 4,000 square feet, that's one ERU, or equivalent residential unit. And then we'll bill up to 4 for residential properties and up to 40 for commercial properties. We have a number of occasions done an audit to make sure that that billing is accurate. If folks have done a lot of patios or driveways or building additions, we need to account for that. We also, sort of as a general rule, on a new construction, start them at 1 for a single family house. And oftentimes they will exceed that 1 unit. So we go through a process to remap. What we found is property owners are really busy when they're home for COVID. And we had a lot of projects. And so we did go through the audit in 2022, and then it rolled into 2023 because of the amount of change was greater than what we have seen in the past. So as of July 1, we're now billing for an additional about 500 ERUs that were the result of that audit effort. So it was definitely worth our time to go through that. Now just to roll into the sort of the health of the fund, the 3 sheets from PFM are included in the packet. I'm gonna highlight a couple of items. By way of history, the utility was started in July 1st of 2012. At that time, our rate was $4.55, and we envisioned a 50-cent increase to that every other year. 11 years later, we've continued that same progress, and we are in line for an additional increase of 50 cents beginning on July 1st, 2024. That would take the rate to $7.55. And so part of this annual review is to make sure that that is in fact what needs to happen and what should happen. That we actually took action back in 2019 that set the rates and that increase up through 2030. So there's no action on the part of the council to make that a rate adjustment unless we want to make an adjustment different than that normal 50 cents. So if you break down or look at the model from PFM, they do have a number on every line of their spreadsheet, which is right here in the sort of the second column from the left. So if I note in my memo line 1 or line 15, that's the line it's referring to, just to point you to the right direction. But line 1 does show that 50-cent increase happening every year, or every other year, excuse me. And so our projection for 2024 is that we'll be billing just over 14,000 ERUs in the community. Line 8 reflects our total revenue. We're just over 1 million, not quite to 1.3 million in our projected budget for 24-25 as far as total revenue per year. One of the areas we obviously have to watch is our debt ratio. So line 45 reflects our revenue to debt ratio, where we need to maintain a 1.0 or higher. And if you look out through our projections there on line 45, we do that every year within the model. We do dip down a little close, 1.09, and 25-26 is our closest we get. Line 59 is probably the line we watch, and PFM watches very closely. We don't have a sort of set policy on what sort of operating reserve we need to have or cash balance we need to have in the fund, but our sort of internal target has always been about $500,000. you'll notice in our current budget year and then our projection for next year, we're dipping down to about 300,000 and then slowly building that back up. That's largely the result of the Terrace Drive project, which I started with, came in quite a bit more than what we were expecting, and we paid for that out of cash versus doing any bonding for that project. And so that dipped us down, and we're slowly sort of building back up. That's kind of caused us to adjust some other things, such as the watershed plan being paid for by a GO bond versus by cash. So that's an area that line we watch very closely. Obviously, the cash balance looks huge as you go out. I would just note that as we go further into the CIP, our normal CIP goes out 5 years. We always model about 10 to 12 years out in the stormwater. And so there aren't projects that far out, which is why you see the cash balance going that high. The third page of the model is kind of the breakdown list of projects by sort of how they'll be paid for and by year. I would note, and if Matt Stoffel was here, he would note the east of Merle Hay, north of 62nd Avenue projects. The stormwater component of all those projects are included in this CIP. They are fairly expensive, and this will be a sort of a pinch point as we get into those projects actively. We're going to have to really look at that 50 cents every other year as we get there. And so we're trying to get projects done now, and we're trying to spread things out, but there are some big projects in there that we're going to have to really be mindful of. And so no action required yet, but just to know that that's going to be a point of discussion we're going to have as those projects kick off. Just a couple of other highlights, just for historical perspective. When the stormwater utility was created, the emphasis was that the revenue that comes in gets spent on construction projects, which is why I've talked the entire time I've been up here tonight. I've talked about construction projects. We only set aside about 10% of the revenue for operations and maintenance. There is no staff time that comes out of the stormwater utility. And then we set aside 1% for the homeowner grant program. I look back as we were putting the budget together for this coming year, we're actually closer to about 8 or 9% typically on operations and maintenance. So we're actually under sort of what we've assumed. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. As I noted, we are scheduled to have an increase on July 1st of the ERU rate to $7.55. And that won't require any action by the council unless you want to do something different. But with that, I'll stop there and be happy to answer any questions.
Council have any questions?
Mayor, I do have a question for David. David, other communities that have a stormwater utility that have also locked in, I know there's lots of conditions and clauses to this question, but those who have locked in rate increases, have most done kind of a flat rate increase in that same every other year? Or have they associated a percentage increase, or do you know?
I haven't done that research.
Okay.
When we originally set the rate of what we started it at, the recommendation was to start it. We started at $4.55 per ERU. The recommendation was closer to $6 where we felt we should start. And so where if we wanted to do everything we wanted to do, we should have started it higher. There was concern obviously about a new fee and that impact. And so sort of the very calculated decision was we'll start it lower with a plan to escalate as needed. And that laid out to about 50 cent every other year. And so it's worked really well, and we've adjusted projects accordingly to sort of continue to fit that model. As I said, as we get into looking at Eastern Merle Hay, we're probably going to have some little maybe tougher discussions, or we might have to be moving some things around to continue that. But I'd have to do research on what other communities are doing to see exactly. But
okay. My other question real quickly is, I know you had indicated that we cap commercial properties at 40 ERU. do we ever, or do we have a sense as to how many commercial properties would actually exceed that if allowed?
Not a lot.
Okay,
And single family capped at 4 the same way. Maybe 5% of our total accounts total.
okay,
It's a small number. Almost all of them fall within the, at the cap or under.
All right.
So it's, now the difference is when you get into commercial, we cap it at 40. The big ones, we're giving, there might only be a small number of properties, but there's a lot of ERUs there. And again, that's a calculated, those would be big bills pushed to, a small number of users. And so.
okay.
Any
Thank you.
any other questions for David? Thank you, David.
Thank you.
We have one additional item that we need to cover in 5 minutes or less. And that is an update on the proposed new capital improvement plan, CIP projects.
Good evening. September 18th, staff reviewed a current project list of CIPs, which we had really shifted around, moved some, dropped a couple off. There was a water project, a couple of water projects. We moved a water tower out in the northwest annexation area. So that was covered on September 18th meeting. This is really going to focus on a couple of new projects that we'll propose tonight. Both of those have recently been discussed at the Public Works Committee. The first project would be an asphalt overlay on Merle Hay Road between Northwest 55th Avenue and Northwest 61st Avenue. This is the remaining area is between the Gateway and the Town Center projects. So recently we just updated both intersections here at 62nd Merle Hay as well as Johnston Drive and Merle Hay. So this is really that segment that's in between there. That section of Merle Hay Road has not had any surface treatments or upgrades for the past 25 years. I think when we talked, it was roughly around 1996, 1995 was the last time Merle Hay had seen an overlay or any type of surface treatments. It would be good, greatly benefit not only the ride quality, but there are a few manhole structures that sit in the wheel pass that kind of affect that ride quality that would need to be adjusted during that overlay. The project would cost approximately $2.5 million. Roughly about 1.5 of that is the construction cost. This would include a 3-inch asphalt overlay, some adjustment of those structures that sit in Merle Hay, as well as it does take into account, it places the overhead power underground. It moves that overhead power, that last segment would push it underground as well. That is also included in that price of $2.5 million. There was discussion at the committee level that maybe we take a look at some of the access controls through that segment as well. I know there is a 3/4 access that sits just south of El Mariachi. There's also a couple of side-by-side left turn lanes, which really aren't utilized anymore, or maybe we need to put a median through there to separate those. There's really nothing separating those two dual left turn lanes. So if we did that, we asked engineer to take a look at that and what that would increase. That would increase the project from $2.5 to $3.2 million to review that and maybe make some access control modifications. This would really kind of complete that last segment of Merle Hay Road from the interstate up to the town center. Be happy to answer any questions on that.
Else have any questions?
So, Matt, looking at this document, the spreadsheet document, not that one, the other one. I don't see the 3.5. I don't see this project in here yet. So have you not incorporated it yet? Or?
No, this is a new project. It has not been incorporated into the CIP.
Okay.
Tonight, looking for feedback to see if we wanted to push that into the CIP. You were looking at the other document that I attached?
Yeah. So you've answered my question though.
This
So
one,
basically,
yeah.
so would you have to then squeeze something out or how does that work?
We would, so this would probably sit further out into the future. It would either be tagged on into the next 5 years or at the end of this one, we'd have to take a look at how that would fit into the CIP, looking for feedback tonight to see if we want to try and incorporate that into the CIP. We're gonna have to wait till, so 62nd Avenue is in the CIP. It's looking to be constructed from 54th down to Beaver Drive in 2026. There was some talk about maybe we need to move that up to 2025. If that was the case, we would want to do this after that. We don't want to have Merle Hay tore up as well as 62nd all at the same time.
Also at the public Public Works meeting, there was discussion about the anticipated streetscape renovation, restoration, whatever you want to call it for Merle Hay Road, covering that same area. And that there should be some coordination between the two projects for sure. And we don't have any schedule for that yet.
Which is why we've anticipated pushing it out into the future.
So isn't I thought we talked about funding this streetscape, but we haven't, that's not in the CIP. So it's more of a item in the regular budget.
The streetscape is a decision package that is funded. We're working through this over the winter here.
The streetscape study is funded.
Correct.
Improvements are not.
You're correct. There's no other questions. I will talk about the second project, and it's really a pavement management patching program for our collectors and arterial roadways, such as like 86th Street, Pioneer Parkway, some of those older aging roads. This would be a project would focus on outsourcing that work to a contractor for the arterial collector streets. This would be less disruptive for the traveling public on those streets. Today, when we go out there and we do patching, we tend to move in for a week or two at a time and then back into residential areas. And then the next month or in a few more weeks, we'll move back out to an 86th Street and continue to do some patching. So benefit would be less disruption to the traveling public. Another benefit would be safety for city staff to get them off those higher speed, higher volume roadways. And then this would allow Public Works staff to focus their efforts in those aging residential neighborhoods. The program cost would be funded similar to the sidewalk program at around $500,000 annually. Current estimates, it was asked at the Public Works Committee to see what we spend currently on our collector and arterial roads, and currently we're spending somewhere between $250,000 and $300,000 on those collector and arterial roadways that staff is out doing the patching and those types of repairs.
So basically, this would be an increase of 200,000, 200 to 250,000 in terms of budgeting.
No, really, it's still a $500,000
is,
ask,
okay.
because what we would do is we would take city staff, and instead of spending that $250,000 to $300,000 on arterials, we would focus our time on residential. So this would be a full $500,000 ask. Questions on that?
Any questions, Council?
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, we have one additional item on the agenda this evening, and that is the introduction of the Police Canine Program, Canine Team Oath, welcome reception with program sponsors. Chief, where do you want us? 1 minute to get all the spectators in, please. Want to grab a seat, bro?
Did you?
Sure.
Wow.
So after the oath of office that you do, this is the badge that you're going to give out your peer merit.
Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. Very excited to be here to talk about our canine program. As you all know, this has been a discussion point and a priority for the police department and for each of you to get this program up and going for more than a year now. How we're going to try to work through this evening fairly efficiently, I'm going to turn it over to Officer Dylan Petermeyer. He's our handler who was selected to operate Buck. He's going to walk through about a 10-minute PowerPoint presentation. Then he's going to let me talk at you for a minute while he goes and grabs Buck. We'll come forward at that point and we'll do an oath of office for the canine team, grab some photographs, and then hopefully we've got enough time to take a break. And we've got a few cookies out there with our canine logo to enjoy. So with that, Officer Petermeyer, if you want to come up, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, sponsors and guests. It's my pleasure this evening to introduce to you guys Canine Buck. Before we get started, bear with me, my public speaking's a little off. I spend most of my day with dogs, so bear with me. So with that being said, we'll get started. I'm Officer Dylan Petermeyer. I've been with the Johnston Police Department for about 4.5 years now. So slide. Buck is a Belgian Malinois. He was born in Poland. He has his own passport. It's kind of cool. He's a 1.5 years old, and he's a dual-purpose canine. What makes Buck different than most dual-purpose canines in the metro is that Buck is a dual-purpose explosive canine. Most of the canines in the metro area are dual-purpose narcotic canines. What that means is patrol capabilities and detection. Like I said, he is explosive, not narcotic, so that makes him one of a kind here. We went through a 2-month course in Southern Iowa at Canine Tactical. Our trainer's name was Joshua Morton. He was a prior Navy SEAL canine handler. He passed a lot of knowledge down to Buck and I. In addition to our 2-month course, we go back to Sheridan twice a month to do sustainment training. And on top of that, we're training every single day whenever we have a moment. Buck's capabilities, he's explosive detection, tracking, apprehension, and article recovery. So the explosive detection, it's self-explanatory, but we have a lot going on here in the city as we grow. Out in the yard, we have concerts that bring in multiple, a lot of people. So we can sweep the yard prior to an event or a school event. For example, this past year, we did a sweep of the homecoming parade route prior to the parade starting. Camp Dodge is often having dignitary visitors, and as you guys have seen on the news, terrorism's on the rise. Tracking capabilities, a lot of people think that fleeing suspects are the only people that Buck will track. Buck can track elderly patients with dementia, children who go away from home, so not just fleeing suspects. Apprehension, again, that one's self-explanatory. That must be justified under state law, federal law, and our Johnston Police Department canine policy. And article recovery, whether that's somebody that discards something as they're running from us, or a child who does go missing from home drops a momentum as they leave, but can find that article while we're tracking. It's said that a dog's sense of smell is 100 to 200 times greater than a human. That's pretty incredible. Something that we talk about in the canine community is a stew theory. I don't know if it's a real theory or not, but we talk about it. It's a human walks into a room and they smell stew, like, oh, that stew smells good. A dog walks into a room and they smell beef and potatoes and carrots and broth, salt and pepper. They smell all the ingredients, so it's pretty incredible. Slide. Buck has a lot of equipment, just as human police officers have. Some of his important ones to capitalize on are his harness. His harness is important as each ring means something to Buck. If we're hooked up top, he knows that we might be in obedience mode. If there's pressure on his back handle, he knows that we might be in an apprehension mode. If it's hooked up near his rear end, he knows that we're tracking. His e-collar I'll come back to. The muzzle's important for the tracking circumstance. Not every track is justified to have an apprehension at the end. So the tracking circumstances, let's say that it is that child and we want that extra layer of protection. We can put his muzzle on and he can still track with the muzzle on. In addition to blind corners, we have lots of residents here, buildings that Buck will be tracking on a 20-foot lead. So he'll be significantly ahead of me. So if we're coming around a blind corner, that extra layer of protection is comforting. His GoPro on his back acts as his body-worn camera, just as we all have body cameras. In addition to that, training feedback. If I don't know If he's doing something that I can't pick apart, I can send that footage to our trainer and he can dissect it for us. Back to the e-collar. His e-collar, I say the dreaded e-collar, I can tell you what it's not. It's not a shock device. There is a stem setting on it, but if stem is utilized, it's utilized at a low setting to the point where we're just knocking on someone's shoulder saying, "Can you hear me?" What we do use it for is building searches. There's a flashlight on his neck, a tone recall, so I can hold the tone and he hears it and he's trained to come back to me. And lastly, a vibrate setting. Slide. We have a state-of-the-art canine vehicle. Carl's emergency vehicle did the upfit for us. You hear tragic stories about canines passing away in vehicles when they overheat. That'll not be the situation with us. We have a hot and pop alarm in place. What that is if it reaches a certain temperature, all of the windows roll down, a large fan kicks on in Buck's window, all the emergency lights start flashing, and an ear-piercing siren goes off. So I'm sure you guys would be able to hear it over here. A transport cage, as you can see, it's very spacious for Buck. And we are able to still transport individuals. There's a single person transport on the other side of his cage, so it doesn't take me out of service, just being a canine officer. Lastly, some cool technology that we have is there's a button on my vest that I can hold into, hold the button in, and his door will pop open on its own. So let's say I'm talking to someone and things start to go south. I can push the button and his door pops open. Pretty cool. Buck's home life. Buck lives like a king. Yeah, so he lives in this shed here. He can go inside or outside. It's temperature controlled. There is a security system in place. And when I wrote that, I thought it was kind of funny because he is his own security system. Buck has a strict diet. He eats raw meat and occasionally he'll get an egg on top. He loves it. It's important that he eats well. In addition to that, we exercise about 5 out of the 7 days a week. Now, that's whether we're running or if there's a weight collar that I'll put on his neck that he does laps in our sally port. It's important that he stays healthy and fit to fight just as us police officers. His work and home balance, it's very important. As much as I would love to bring him inside and love on him and give him his ball, pet him all the time, it's important that he has that nice balance. When he comes to work, he gets his ball, he gets the human interaction, he gets loved on. So it's important that he wants to go to work. Slide. This was one of our most recent deployments that I thought I would share with everyone. We were working first watch, which is a night shift. We got dispatched to a domestic with a weapon. Domestics are one of the most dangerous calls that we often go to, and now we had a weapon involved. The call details, it was a female caller had told dispatch that they had broke up, her and her boyfriend had just broke up. He started acting erratic, so she left the scene. She advised that he was suicidal and intoxicated, so she left for her safety. She went to her friend's house, got a few friends, and they were going to return to the scene to get some of her belongings. When they returned, they made entry into the apartment, and he grabbed a knife, and while chasing them out, he made homicidal statements. So as we're going to a scene like this, there's a lot on our mind. We need to act quickly. We're looking at the victim's safety, bystander safety, our safety, the suspect's safety. Do we need to stage medics? Where's the knife? It's unaccounted for. Is he thinking suicide by cop or self-inflicted? So there's a lot going on. If we could play this video, we can show how.
Open the door, let me see your hands. Police canine, you might be bit. Show me your hands as soon as you open the door. Open the door. Show me your hands. Watch him. Watch him. Watch him. Lay on the ground right now. Watch him. Watch him. On the ground. Face down. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Watch him, buddy. Watch him. Watch him. No weapon. No weapon, sir. Yes, sir. Fooligan, good boy. Fooligan. No, sir. Fooligan. Let's go. Fooligan.
So as you can see, that was best case scenario. No one was injured, suspect was detained. In this case, it was more of a show of force with Buck being there. As you could see, he integrated into our team. There was total of 5 officers on scene. He didn't seem to care about the other officers. He knew his role. He was able to turn it on when I wanted him to, and he turned it off when I wanted him to. So another thing that I want to give credit to is Officer Collins and Officer Sinkowitz, who are my partners here. You didn't even hear us talk to each other. Everybody knew their role. I pulled Buck back. We had 1 cover officer, 1 detain him, and it just shows some of the professionals that you guys have working in this city. So slide. I like
Open
to
the
say
door and let
that,
me see.
it didn't turn out like that. The suspect was barricaded inside, and we didn't know where he was. And we had legal justification to make entry into the residence. If there's a long hallway or something, that's often what we call a fatal funnel, lots of doorways. We don't know where the suspect is, so we could send Buck down the hallway and he could tell us what door the individual is in. And that's one of my brave officers behind that door. In closing, I just want everybody here to remember that at the end of the day, a Buck is a dog. He is not a robot. He is very smart, talented, a lot of capabilities, but he is a dog at the end of the day. A quote that I want to leave everyone with is from an officer out of Silver Spring, Maryland. To ask an animal to do something that is inherently dangerous without them knowing it is dangerous is very honorable. So I just wanted to leave you guys with that. Can we please have a round of applause for our sponsors here? It was incredible to see our community come together and raise the money to start this program. We quite honestly could not have done it without you, and I know many of you are here today, so again, thank you very much. Slide. Another thank you in a profession that's already hard enough on family. This is my wife and daughter. They've welcomed Buck in arms wide open. So thank you. Buck takes a lot of time out of our day, so thank you for welcoming him.
All right, Officer Peter Meyer is going to go run and grab Buck real quick here. We're going to bring him in. This is Buck's Monday, so he's fired up and ready to work. So we'll see how this goes. The intention is going to be to bring Officer Peter Meyer and Buck forward to swear a canine team oath that the mayor will administer. After that, we're going to have Buck receive his credentials that Officer Peter Meyer will pin on as opposed to the mayor. And then after that, if we can grab some photos quickly, we'll ask our sponsors that are present to come up too. And then we'll have a little time. The canine vehicle is going to be parked out over here. It's raining right now, so if you've got an umbrella or jacket, but if you want to check out the resources that vehicle provides to Buck, it's pretty impressive. Just to echo what Officer Peter Meyer said, we could not have done this program without the support of our sponsors. There's many in the room this evening. This was a no-brainer for all of them. They saw the value in it, they stepped forward, and they're excited about the future. That this is something that I think we can all embrace. There's been a tremendous amount of thought and effort put behind it. You see the professional way in which Officer Peter Meyer takes this, and understand it's no small sacrifice for him. He's in charge of that dog every single day of its life, and he accounts for every single action it takes. And that's a true test to someone who's dedicated and professional for all the right reasons to serve their communities. So we're excited to have him and Buck be part of the team. And as you see, there's many officers here this evening too that are excited for this moment as well. So
Chief, to make sure that we all know who the sponsors are in the audience, can we have them stand or can you identify them or?
If you're a sponsor, please stand up. Supervisor Brownell with Polk County, they were a platinum level, I believe, platinum level sponsor. You got Tyler Tompkins with Spire. Some of you recognize him from his former life here. He was an easy sell as well. We've got Corteva here. Do we have, I'm sorry, Kendall, thank you. We've got Deb, who is the person that designed our logo. Your cookies are going to have logos on them. We've got Mr. Balmer. Yep, who came in as well. And then Chris Christensen, who was one that actually came in a few years ago and challenged us to start looking at this program and move forward with it.
Are we ready? Whoa. Before I administer this oath, typically the oath is about one sentence long,
Yeah.
and I'm not sure who drafted. Did you draft this?
No, that was
It's very
the
well
chief
done.
of police. Yes.
He's gonna put you up to your challenge here, just a minute.
Okay.
So, Officer Peter Meyer, please raise your right hand and repeat after me. And Buck, please raise your right paw and repeat after me. I, Officer Peter Meyer,
I, Officer Peter Meyer,
on behalf of K-9 Buck,
on behalf of K-9 Buck,
do swear
do swear
that we will faithfully and impartially,
that we will faithfully and impartially,
without fear or favor,
without fear or favor,
discharge our duties
discharge our duties
as a police K-9 unit for the city of Johnston, Iowa. We will support the Constitution of the United States
We will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the state of Iowa
and the Constitution of the state of Iowa
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
We further swear and affirm
We further swear and affirm
that we will protect and serve
that we will protect and serve
the citizens of Iowa
the citizens of Iowa
in our joint Homeland Security mission,
in our joint Homeland Security mission,
detect explosive threats,
detect explosive threats,
and enhance the safety of the community we serve,
and enhance the safety of the community we serve.
enforce laws in partnership with one another,
Enforce laws with partnership with one another,
search for lost children or the elderly,
search for lost children or the elderly,
track and apprehend suspects and illegal contraband,
track and apprehend illegal suspects and contraband,
and serve as a goodwill ambassador
and serve as a goodwill ambassador
for the City of Johnston Police Department.
for the City of Johnston Police Department.
We understand the badge we wear
We understand the badge we wear
is a symbol of public faith and trust,
is a symbol of public faith and trust,
charging us to perform our duties impartially. Charging us to perform
charging us to perform
our duties
our
impartially.
duties impartially.
We will bear true faith,
We will bear true faith,
loyalty, and allegiance
loyalty, and allegiance
to our oath.
to our oath.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
It's always that way.
We have a badge. Yeah. And you need to sign the oath here. Yeah, one more. We should get Buck's paw on here instead of the seal of, seal of the city. Well, again, you know, what an exciting night. We've waited a long time to have our first canine unit in Johnston. For our community. We couldn't have done this without the support of our sponsors. You know, eventually we may have gotten a canine unit, but we certainly couldn't have done it on the timeline that we did. So we want to thank each and every one of you. This has just been incredibly important for our community to have, and we do appreciate your support in making this possible. So I think we need to have, are we ready for some pictures?
Yeah, in front of the podium. I'll say hi. Then you can.
There we go. There we go.
Oh, very good.
We can, let's grab some out in the hall. Is that all right? or-
Out in the hallway?
Yep. Yep. Let's go ahead and break the formality if you're okay with that, Mayor, and we can take a few more pictures out in the hall, look at the vehicle and enjoy some cookies real quick.